Okay, so I'm just going to do a quick discussion about the little activity on secant and cosecant. Uh, the thing I want to point out to you is when you are trying to find your values for secant and cosecant, we know that cosecant is the reciprocal function of sine. So the way we would type that into the calculator for cosecant is we would type 1 over sine of x. If we're doing the secant graph, we would type in 1 over the cosine of x because we know secant and cosine are also reciprocal functions. So you won't have a secant and a cosecant button on your calculator. So that's how we kind of go about typing that in to find our values. Now on the activity, we told you we wanted you to find the values and then make a sketch of your graph. And so what I've done here is I have the chart here and some things I just want you to notice as you look at your values here on this little lab here. The first thing is we have some values when we're comparing it, our cosecant, let's say, to sine, we have some values that are undefined. So all the places where sine is 0, we have undefined. So at 0, at pi, if we scroll down here to 2 pi, we're undefined. The other things that I want to point out to you is the values where they're the same. So you'll notice that pi halves, which is 1, that's our maximum value. Cosecant is also 1. And at our lowest value, -1, cosecant is also the same. So that would be something I want to point out to you with the cosecant. If we take a look at the comparison of sine to cosecant on the graph, here's our graph. You remember a few weeks back we graphed the sine curve. And so I still have that graph here. Here's my sine curve. Notice at the places where sine is 0 and undefined, we've got a dotted line. This is for our cosecant graph. And then in between that, we basically have some parabolas. So we go from the maximum point of sine, sketching a parabola, the minimum point of sine, sketching the parabola, and then it just continues and goes along the x-axis in both directions. Now, if we go back to our chart here and kind of talk real briefly about cosine, some things again I want you to notice on our values on cosine. Notice they're both the same at 0. They're both the same at our minimum point of -1 at pi, and they're both the same again at 2 pi. And then we do have some places where it's undefined. Notice at 270 or at 3 pi halves, it's undefined. And this is where cosine is 0, our secants are undefined. So if we compare those graphs and take a look at what that looks like, if we go to our cosine graph, remember our cosine starts at the maximum, kind of makes a U shape and continues on. The places where cosine is 0 is where we draw in our asymptotes. This is for the secant graph. And then at the maximum point, we're going to sketch our parabola going towards the asymptotes, the minimum parabola going down, and at the maximum, again, going back up. So that's just kind of a brief introduction to what our secant and cosecant graphs look like. In the notes today, we're going to talk about the specifics as to how to graph those. So